Hey, scrappy people. It's Tracy Reed here today, and I am coming at you with a little bit of a different project. So I had all of these gorgeous papers from the Cocoa Daisy January kit, and I was feeling a little bit of the traveler's notebook love. So I am going to make myself a patterned paper traveler's notebook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut down all of these papers to 8.5 by 8.5. And I decided that I wanted this one to be my middle page. So I'm building my album around this centerpiece. And I do use the scrap. I'm going to still cut it to 8.5 wide, but I love having papers in my traveler's notebook when I make them myself that are not the full 4.5 by 8.5 or whatever it is size. I love having different sized pattern papers in here. So I am going to use some of my scraps, and I'm going to add in some smaller papers too. So I'm going to fast forward through this trimming part because I'm just going to trim them all down to 8.5 by 8.5. And we will also add in some other goodies. So, yep, here we go. Okay, they're all trimmed down, and now I'm going to score each of these papers along the middle so that they're easier to fold. Now be really careful when you do this. The actual Cocoa Daisy papers that I used were nice and thick so they didn't rip, but the ones that were not Cocoa Daisy, like the crepe paper, they ripped a little bit because I pushed too hard. So I do end up fixing them with some washi tape down the line. You can see, whoops, that one's burnt. So just score them all, make them easy to fold. One more. There we go. And now your little book is coming together. So I'm going to pull out some 4x6 cards. You can also use the 3x4 cards, but just to make it easy on myself, I'm just going to go with a couple 4x6 cards, and I'm just going to score them right in half, and I'm going to fold them right into the binding. So what that ends up doing is leaving a little 3x4 card on either side of the page. So you can see, I'm going to slip this one right in here, and then I have a little cute tuck in that is not the same size as the rest of the album. Figure out where I want to put this one. And I think I'm going to go right here with it. And I also like to make them so that they are not all, on the bottom or all on the top. First of all, it makes it so that the binding isn't too thick all in one place, but also it just gives it a cute little variety. So you can see that that paper is ripped. So I'm going to get out my washi tape, and I'm just going to washi tape the fold so that I can sew it into the binding and it won't be ripped anymore. And I just chose some gray washi tape. The washi tapes included in the Cocoa Daisy kit were patterned or sparkly, and I didn't want to have that in the middle, so I just pulled some out of my stash. And I need to fix this one too. And what's funny is these end up right next to each other in the fold, so I'm going to make sure that the washi tape itself lines up too, so that the stripes are all lined up because I'm anal retentive like that. Okay, so now what we have to do is I'm going to get some binder clips, and I'm going to clip the top and the bottom of this book so that all of the pages stay still after I double check and make sure I like the layout. Wanted to make sure all of the colors go well together on every page. And now I'm going to get a board underneath this and an awl to just poke some holes. Make sure I get a mat under there so I don't stab my desk. And I'm just going to, I think I poked 6 holes right in the center of the binding through all of the pages. They're all about 1.5 inches maybe apart, so that I get a nice solid firm binding. Now I'm going to get a needle and thread out. You can use embroidery floss, you can use basically any thread that you want. I just pull out regular old sewing machine thread and I loop it a few times. So I initially pulled out yellow and white, and I end up going with the yellow because I thought it worked really well with the colors of the album. So I'm just pulling out a bunch and looping it a few times so that it's extra thick. I think I end up with like 3 threads. And then I thread the needle and tie off the end. And don't be afraid of the needle and thread. It is not scary. This is not hard. All you have to do is start at the top hole, and I like to come in from the back of the, or the, the outside of the book, so that the knot is on the outside instead of the inside. Making sure I get through all of the holes. And then you just go to the next one. Make sure that your string doesn't bunch up. And then I double back to the first hole to reinforce it. And then double back to the second hole on the inside to reinforce it. And then work my way down the binding just like that, going back and forth, making sure that all of the holes have been reinforced and that they at least have 1 or 2 stitches each. Now I did mess up this first stitch, so I'm going to fast forward. I accidentally went through the knot, which made it all tangly, so I ended up having to cut off the knot and start over, which is no big deal. But I didn't want the outside to be messy, so I made sure that I was more careful the second time. Mistakes happen. So we're going to fast forward through that part so you don't have to watch me redo everything. And now I am at the end, tying off the knot. I like to loop it through the stitches a few times and tie a few knots just to make sure it's nice and secure. Now, if you don't like the look of the thread on the outside, you can always put washi tape on the outside to bind it once the stitching is all done. Or if you don't want to stitch at all, you can use staples. Now, the thing is, I don't use staples because A, my stapler sucks and it doesn't like going through all of these papers. And B, I just don't like the look of staples. But a lot of people use their stapler, so it just depends on your own personal preference. Now, like I said in the beginning, I really like having multi-sized papers in my traveler's notebooks. So I'm going to just trim off the edges of some of these papers and make them all a bit of a different size. Just randomly, they're not going to be the same. But I do want to make sure that the edges of the outside of the notebook don't look like ragged. So I do make sure that the inner pages are shorter than the outer pages. You can do this beforehand if you want to. I like to do it at the end because that way I don't have the paper centered completely when I do my binding. So the same paper on one side can be a lot shorter than it is on the back of the book, that kind of a thing. And that is seriously how easy it is to make your own traveler's notebook. How adorable is this? Now I can make an album, add my own pictures, add in more journal cards, and decorate it to my heart's content. And it is all ready for me once I get there. And I think I'll be doing that. I think I'm going to do some sort of Valentine's-y sort of album with this, so I'll be doing it over the next month. Maybe I'll give it as a present to my husband. All right, if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. I would love to have you. Thank you.